The sun had barely crested the horizon when Maria stepped out of her small guest house, camera bag slung over her shoulder. The air smelled of wood smoke and fresh bread, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster announced the morning with theatrical persistence. She had been in this remote Guatemalan village for 3 weeks now, documenting traditional market practices for her doctoral research, and today was market day, the day everything would change. Maria walked down the narrow dirt path, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Children ran past her, laughing and shouting, their voices echoing off the colorful adobe houses that lined the street. She smiled at them, raising her hand in greeting. They had stopped being shy around her after the first week, once they realized she wasn't just another tourist, passing through with a camera and shallow curiosity. The village square was already transforming. Vendors arrived on foot, on bicycles, and trucks so old they seemed held together by prayer and rust. They carried baskets of produce, hand-woven textiles, pottery, and goods Maria couldn't even name. The setup was choreographed chaos, everyone knowing exactly where they belonged, stalls appearing as if by magic. "Buenos dias, Maria," called out Don Pedro, an elderly man who sold wooden carvings. He waved from across the square, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "Buenos dias, Don Pedro," she called back, making her way toward him. Her Spanish had improved dramatically over the past weeks, though she still stumbled over complex phrases. "You are here early today," he said, arranging his figurines with careful precision. "I want to capture everything," Maria replied. "The whole process, from setup to the first customers." Don Pedro nodded approvingly. "You see what others do not. This is good." Maria spent the next hour moving through the market, photographing and filming. She captured the way morning light filtered through canvas awnings, the careful arrangement of tomatoes and peppers and perfect pyramids, the animated conversations between vendors who had known each other for decades. This was her passion, documenting the living traditions that anthropology textbooks often reduce to dry facts and dates. She found herself drawn, as she had been every market day, to the stall of an elderly woman everyone called Abuela Rosa. Rosa sold herbs, traditional remedies, and tinctures passed down through generations. The old woman's hands moved with practiced efficiency as she sorted bundles of dried plants, her fingers gnarled but steady. "May I film you working, Abuela?" Maria asked, as she did every week. Rosa looked up, her dark eyes sharp despite her age. She studied Maria for a long moment, longer than usual. Something flickered across her face, an expression Maria couldn't quite read. "See," Rosa said finally, "but come closer. Sit." Maria settled onto a small wooden stool beside the stall, adjusting her camera angle. The market was filling with people now, voices rising in a cheerful cacophony of haggling and gossip. She focused her lens on Rosa's hands as they worked, the way they moved with the confidence of someone who had performed these tasks 10,000 times. Then it happened. Maria's phone, perched precariously on her knee as she filmed, began to slip. She lunged for it, the movement awkward, and it tumbled to the ground, skittering under Rosa's table. Maria cursed under her breath and bent down to retrieve it, her hand sweeping through the dusty space beneath the stall. Her fingers touched something solid, not her phone, something else. She pulled it out along with her phone and froze. It was a box, maybe 8 inches square, carved from dark wood so old it was almost black. But it wasn't the age that made her breath catch. It was the symbols. Intricate glyphs covered every surface of the box, carved with extraordinary precision. Maria's heart began to pound. She knew these symbols. She had seen fragments of them in museums, in academic papers, in the one partially preserved codex that had survived the Spanish conquest. These were glyphs from the ancient civilization she had been researching for 5 years, the one that had mysteriously vanished before the Maya rose to prominence. "Where did you get this?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands trembled as she held the box. Rosa's reaction was immediate and alarming. The old woman's eyes widened, and she snatched the box from Maria's hands with surprising strength. "That is nothing," Rosa said sharply, shoving the box deep into a bag beneath her table. "You should not have seen that." "Abuela, please," Maria said, her anthropology training warring with her excitement. "Those symbols, I've been studying them. This could be incredibly important." "Important?" Rosa's voice rose. "You think you understand what is important. You outsiders always think you understand. Other vendors are starting to look their way." Maria realized she was making a scene, exactly what she had promised herself she wouldn't do. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to upset you. Those markings, they're from a civilization we thought left no physical records. If that box is authentic—" "It is authentic," Rosa interrupted, her voice cold. "It has been in my family for 17 generations and more than anyone can count, and it will stay in my family." "I'm not trying to take it from you," Maria said quickly. "I would never suggest that. But could you at least tell me about it? Its history?" Rosa stared at her for a long moment, then seemed to deflate slightly. She glanced around the market, then leaned closer to Maria. "You want to know?" she asked. "Then you must speak to Don Mateo, the elder. But I warn you, some knowledge brings only trouble." Maria found Don Mateo sitting outside his house at the edge of the village, exactly where Rosa said he would be. The old man was ancient, his face a roadmap of deep wrinkles, his hair white as cotton, but his eyes were clear and alert as Maria approached, as if he had been expecting her. "Abuela Rosa sent you," he said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes," Maria replied, surprised. "How did you know?" "Because you saw the box," Don Mateo said simply. "Sit, please. We have much to discuss, and I am too old to crane my neck looking up at you." Maria sat on a worn wooden bench beside him. The view from here was spectacular. The village spread out below them, the market square a splash of color in the center, and beyond that, mountains rising into clouds. "Tell me what you know of our history," Don Mateo said. "The history they teach in your universities." Maria chose her words carefully. "The academic consensus is that before the Maya, there were earlier civilizations in this region, but we have very little concrete evidence. Some glyphs, some architectural fragments, stories passed down orally. Most scholars believe whatever records existed were destroyed during the conquest." "And what if they were not destroyed?" Don Mateo asked. "What if they were hidden?" Maria's pulse quickened. "Then it would be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in modern history." "Significant," Don Mateo repeated, tasting the word. "Always this word with you academics. But what does it mean? Significant for whom?" "For everyone. For understanding human history, cultural development, the achievements of indigenous peoples that have been ignored or erased." "Pretty words," Don Mateo said, not unkindly. "But I have lived long enough to know that when outsiders discover something significant in our land, it usually ends with them taking it away. Museums in your country are full of our ancestors' belongings, are they not?" Maria felt her face flush. He wasn't wrong. "Yes, they are. And that's a wrong that many of us are trying to correct. But Don Mateo, if what you're suggesting is true, if there are records that have survived, the world needs to know. Your people need the world to know." The old man studied Maria for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps. Rosa's box, the one you saw, It has been in her family for 17 generations. Her ancestor was a keeper of knowledge, what you might call a priest or scribe. When the conquistadors came with their fire and their swords and their god, the keepers hid what they could. "What's in the box?" Maria asked, barely breathing. "A map," Don Mateo said, "and a warning." "A map to what?" "To a place that should perhaps remain lost. But I am old, and the young people no longer remember the old stories. They leave the village for the cities, and our history disappears with them. Perhaps it is time." He stood up slowly, his joints creaking. "Come with me." Maria followed him into his small house, her heart hammering. The interior was simple, clean, walls decorated with faded photographs and religious icons. Don Mateo moved to a corner, pushed aside a woven rug, and revealed a loose floorboard. From underneath, he pulled out a cloth wrap.